Is the way you're using your will just as silly as trying to use your lawnmower to clear snow off your driveway? Hi, I'm Brandon Ayers, and I'm an estate planning attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So this is not legal advice, this is just for your information. And I want to talk to you about wills. See, what wills do well and what they don't do well is just as obvious to me as it may be to you that your lawnmower is not the right tool to use to clear snow off your driveway. And so, before we get into the details, I want to get to the big board and define a few things for you. Come on. Before we get into what a will does do well and what a will doesn't do well, it's important to get some common language down as I explain these things. One of the things I'm going to explain that as a will helps you nominate guardians, for example, or a will does not avoid probate. So I want to lay the groundwork for what I mean when I say by that. So will, simply your written instructions for what you want to happen to your estate, does not avoid probate. And probate, you can see, is the court process for what should happen to your things, approving your will. It's the management and overseeing of your will, essentially. So it's inherent that a will does not by itself avoid probate. There is something called intestate probate through intestacy. When you do not have a will, the state's default rules will apply to who gets what, and your will here will override these default rules. That's something it does well. And that's what I'm talking about, where we have this interplay behind these terms that might not necessarily be obvious in their meaning to you. Please don't confuse a probate estate with your estate. Those are different things. Look it up if you want more information there. Because, by the way, this isn't legal advice. This is just information for you. I'm not your attorney. I said that earlier. And the court will appoint your executor at the beginning of a probate process. So you can see all these terms, how they interplay. I think this gives us enough foundation to move on to what a will does do well and what a will doesn't do well. We're going to start there, actually, what a will doesn't do well. As I mentioned in the definitions alluded to, so a will doesn't avoid probate. That's a problem because it is a very big misconception among people that if you have a will, you don't have to worry about probate. And the fact is that you probably should view your will as a ticket to probate court as opposed to a ticket out of probate court. And the reason for it is each state has rules for what probate is required and when it's not. For example, in Illinois, if you have a checking account with $100,000 on it and that checking account's just in your name and you pass away, that $100,000 mark is going to put you into probate. Now I'm going to have a full video on probate here in a little bit again, in another part of this series. But what you need to know for now is that probate's not cheap. It takes a long time, and it's public. So which of those three do you like? Do you like money instead of going to beneficiaries, go to attorneys and courts and financial institutions? Or do you like it to go to your beneficiaries? Do you like your beneficiaries to get things on their own timeline or in a court's timeline? Do you like having all your information about the nearest and dearest things and people in your life being public facing or private? It's probably all three of those things that you like the opposite of probate on. But the truth is sometimes probate can be a good thing. In the probate video, I'll get into when that is, but most people want to avoid probate for good reason, and your will is just not the ticket to do that. Now, another thing that I want to talk about a will does not do, it doesn't do anything for you while you are alive. Now, this is really important because I get calls, I'll say it like this, my mom's in a hospital, she's not doing well, but I'm the executor on her will, how can you help me get her finances in order so we can get that lined up? I have to tell those people, hey, listen, unless your mom's gone and you've been to court and got what's called letters of office or letters testamentary, which is basically fancy terms for a single sheet of paper where the judge approves you as executor, then you really can't do anything. And people are devastated when they hear that answer because now they're looking into different kinds of court processes to get approval to avoid probate or things of that nature. So that's what wills don't do well. So what does a will do well? Well, first of all, it overrides the state's default rules. I mentioned those intestacy rules, the state's default of who gets what. So for example, if you have a wife and kids, like I do, and you pass away with nothing done in Illinois, those default rules would say that your wife gets half of your estate and the kids split half of the estate. So if you wanted your wife to get the whole estate while she's alive, then you'd need a will or a trust to override those rules. So a will does that well. A will is also a good way to nominate guardians for young or vulnerable children. Usually you think of, hey, if something happens to us on that date night, we want John and Mary to take over and have custody and see the money side of making sure our kids get out of the house and get independent adults correctly. A will does that fantastically. In some states, there's other ways to nominate guardians, but a will does it really well pretty much across the board there. But again, the public nature now of a will could make it not the right tool to handle complex disinheritances or ways to gift to somebody who might be vulnerable to something like addiction. That's when you want to perhaps look into trusts, which again, we'll cover in a future video, to handle that a little more privately. So those are what wills do well and what wills don't do well. And I really want to thank you for watching the video. If you made it this far, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you feel like I've earned it, I'd really appreciate a subscription, a like, a comment, a rating. All those things would really help me launch this channel. If you want to know more about topics like these, I'm hosting an Estate Planning 101 course. We're going to dive into, over 8 weeks, individual topics, wills being one of them. We're going to have more details, back and forth, a little assignments to do, a little homework to do, ways to get you really well versed in these things. And you can use the coupon code here for 25% off that course, and the link in the description to register. So if you want to do that by March 31st, that's when the 25% off expires. So sign up before then, before this course is all booked up. You know, I expect a really good response. And again, just want to say thank you for watching this first of hopefully many longer videos on this YouTube channel, and I appreciate your support.